If you're struggling in your job search, you're not imagining it. Employers are looking for the perfect fit. Stick around and I'll tell you more with some data to back it up. Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I want to talk about everybody's favorite subject, trying to get a job in a crappy labor market. And one of the most common and prevailing themes with job seekers is that employers are looking for the perfect fit and they're not being realistic. The reality is that's the truth, and there's data to back it up, and I want to share a survey that I found from the University of Phoenix. But before we get into that, if you're interested in learning how to skip past these pesky recruiters and get deeper into the interview process and actually land a job offer that's decent, check out my free newsletter. And in it, I share concise, actionable tips on how to approach the job search with more strength and conviction, how to write a resume that actually gets results, and ultimately how to leverage networking to bypass the recruiter altogether. Keep in mind, it's absolutely free, so hope to see you there. So a little bit of backstory about why I decided to make this video. And not too long ago, I made a LinkedIn post that got an interesting reaction. And in it, I shared an anecdote about a job seeker that I interviewed who passed one forward and ended up helping out a friend, and that was the purpose of the post. However, no matter how positive of a message that you send, there will always be people out there who find the negative. And sure enough, this post attracted some people who had strong opinions and they look for the bad in everything. So I want to break down the post, give you a little bit of insight into how employers actually hire and why some people really struggle with their job search. Then we'll take a look at the actual data from this survey so that you can see that I'm not just making this up. So here's the actual post from LinkedIn, and it was really designed to be more encouraging for job seekers. If you run into a job posting that you're not a good fit for, pay it forward to somebody else. You can help somebody else in need. And I'm a big believer in the law of karma. So what goes around comes around. And I do believe that if you put good karma out, good karma will come to you. So it was just a little anecdote from a time I worked for a big tech company you've all heard of. You've all probably been customers of at one point in time or another. And basically what I said was, a while back, I interviewed a person for a job, and he was impressive, personable, and I liked the guy a lot. He was actually a nice guy. It was a pleasant conversation. He had a lot of decent skills. But unfortunately, the position that I was interviewing him for was not a good fit. And a little bit of background on the position was as an L6 Android developer. And if you're not familiar with an L6, that the L6 for this company was a very senior position, and it was designed to, this role was supposed to help mentor the younger engineers on the team. So they really needed to have a strong background in mobile development specifically. And the tech stack that we used was mostly Kotlin and then a little bit of Java and JavaScript. And in this case, this candidate had the right keywords on his resume, and he had a long history of work. He had done a lot of development, and he listed in that he had some experience with Android development. So that's why I gave him a call. However, I didn't see a ton of that experience on his resume. I at least wanted to just suss it out with him. So I gave him a phone call and basically went through an interview process. And when I asked him to expand on his experience with developing Android apps at enterprise levels, he admitted to me, he's like, listen, I don't really have a ton of experience. I worked with some other teams that were working with Android. I touched it a little bit, but most of my experience was not on the app side of things. And so he was very upfront about it. And I said, you know what, I will go back to my hiring manager and I'll just ask him if it's something that he's willing to develop. I think he checked a lot of the boxes, but there was a couple of major ones that, probably 2 or 3 major boxes that he didn't check. And that was the point of the recruiter screen. We have those recruiter screens to just feel it out. Do you have these experiences? Because he had the right keywords on his resume, but it was clear with that specific or a couple of those specific keywords that he just kind of put the keyword out there and didn't really have the goods to back it up. So I went back and checked with my hiring manager. The hiring manager unfortunately said, as much as I would like to move forward with a candidate like this, this person is expected to have very deep experience working with apps at an enterprise level. So in other words, it scales out to 1 million+ devices, and they'll be expected to mentor younger engineers on the team. And that's going to be a critical component. And if they don't know how to do Android development specifically and these coding languages that are specific to Android devices, he said, could he learn it? Absolutely. don't have any concern about his ability to learn it, but the problem is that this role is considered to be advanced. We're paying for an advanced person, and unfortunately we don't have the bandwidth to train and get to the point where this person would be comfortable mentoring people when he's kind of gapping on two major things. So I went back to the candidate and I said, unfortunately we won't be able to move forward with it. I talked to the hiring manager, but I put a note in our ATS system that liked everything else about him, think he would be a really strong fit for the team, but just somebody else's team. And hopefully another recruiter on the broader team would see it and be able to pick him up and kind of give him I gave him an endorsement basically. And he said, that's too bad. But he goes, I tell you what, there was somebody that I worked with that actually was the Android developer for our group, and she was really good. So you should check her out. She just got laid off too. So I took his reference and I contacted this person, and sure enough, she had the scope of experience that we're looking for, and we ended up moving forward with it. And she was a good fit for the role. And she was very appreciative of the fact that he gave the referral. And as a result of this, I was appreciative and went to bat for the guy and actually got him paid out on a referral bonus. And that was the point of this posting, was just to encourage people to do the same thing, that it's not always a competition, pay it forward, etc., kind of innocently enough. And sure enough, I had some people come on saying that this isn't inspirational. You should have hired that guy. You made a mistake. You recruiters are all the same, and you don't know how to see talent, and you just passed up on a really good candidate, and maybe you should learn how to recruit better, all this stuff. And I'm it's very interesting when people have these strong opinions about things when they don't know anything about the story, and it's like taking it off on a complete tangent that was unrelated. And for me, I don't take these things personally. I think that people who tend to troll and tend to react very strongly, I recognize have their own wounds, and it's usually because of an experience that they've had in their own lives, and they haven't really come to terms with it or whatever, and it's just easier to lash out at somebody else rather than reflecting more deeply on it. And in this case, this guy was completely fine with the outcome here. He knew he wouldn't be a good fit. And in fact, if we had hired this guy for this role, he would have floundered. He would have gone through and maybe not even made it through the ramp, like the 90-day ramp. And he would have likely had a quick turnover. He wouldn't have been successful, and it wouldn't have been a good outcome for him anyway. And he recognized that, and so it wasn't a big deal. And so these people were making this a big deal that wasn't a big deal. But the reality is that on certain positions, employers are very picky, and you can't just hire people based on, well, he was a nice guy, or, well, we really liked, he had some of the skills, but not all. And oh, you should give a chance to somebody and make a stretch because you never know what you're going to get. And then I 100% agree with that. There are times where I've hired people, I went to bat for them because I really thought they had a great attitude, but it wasn't for mission critical jobs where the skill set was so specific. And again, these are very senior positions that I was recruiting. These were not junior level roles where you could kind of learn on the job. These were expected to walk in day one and know what you're doing and start to help developing the team around you. And the reality is that employers are getting increasingly more specific about what it is that they're looking for. And I know that is very frustrating for the average job seeker because, the people who are kind of, I would call, trolling my post are probably people who are struggling in their job search, and they're getting rejected for jobs that they think they have some of the skills for, and are kind of lashing out just in in the cyberspace because it's easy to do it. There's a face to a name, being online. I make myself an easy target in that regard, and I get it. But the reality is that a lot of people send off generic resumes that are not differentiated skill sets, that don't have the deep level of understanding for the jobs that they're applying to, even though they think they do. They send me their resume and I look at it, or any recruiter, any hiring manager. Sometimes I'll even see the resume and I'll like it, and I'll send it to my hiring manager. The hiring manager will say, this doesn't really match what we're looking for. And then they'll kind of educate me, and then I'll take, okay, I didn't know that. Let me take some notes here and kind of go back to the drawing board. And then the reality is in a job market where things are slow, and I don't think that the job market is very robust right now. I think I've talked about this in other videos where I do feel like the numbers are misleading that are coming out. I think there's a lot of part-time jobs. There's a lot of contract positions that have been, if you take a full-time job, you lay it off, you replace it with a contract position that doesn't pay benefits. You have people that are underemployed, or they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And those are all factored into the data that we're seeing. But high-paying full-time jobs with good benefits are getting more and more rare these days. And again, we'll take a look at some of the numbers to back this up. And the reality is that companies are getting inundated with resumes. People are throwing mud up against the wall and seeing what sticks. And I mean, I just made a video about a guy that applied for 1,600 jobs and hasn't gotten a good offer yet. And not too long ago, I was recruiting a very senior IT position where I got 750 applications in about 26 hours. It was posted on a Tuesday at like 3 p.m. And by the following close of business at 5 p.m., we had 750 applications for this one particular role, and it was getting to the point where I couldn't handle all the candidates. So actually, they shut the rec off so it would pull down so we wouldn't be collecting any more applications. And when I would go through all those applications, I think out of that 750, you just had so few of them were even remotely qualified. I mean, people were literally just throwing their name in the ring, and they weren't even it's like they didn't even look at the job posting. They just kind of just threw a resume at it. When you're a job seeker, that's the competition that you're up against. You've got thousands of people throwing their name in the ring all across the world in a lot of cases, and it makes it much more difficult to get seen. So you have to go above and beyond. If you are a good fit for a job, you have to make sure that it is very clearly spelled out in your resume. And resume strategy is a very real thing. And based on what I see, I think a lot of people dismiss resumes, and they have a lot of pride in all the things that they've accomplished, and they make a very convoluted resume that doesn't get to the point quickly. And it makes it much harder for them to get hired. I mean, you've only got 5 seconds to catch a recruiter's attention, especially when they're getting 750, 800,000. Some cases I've seen even as high as 10 or 15,000 applications for like remote roles. And you go and look on LinkedIn yourself. You can see it. You can see the number of applications and all this kind of stuff. So the reality is that you have to be targeted, and you have to use any advantage you can to clearly show you're fit for these jobs. As a result, let's just call it the peanut gallery. Their comments about this is they're just not realistic, and it's not based in reality. Companies are picky. They want to look for the perfect candidate. Now, do I agree with it 100% of the time? No. I do think that some companies should be giving opportunities to people to stretch them. But when you have that many job applicants, companies can afford to be picky, and that's just the reality of the game right now. But I want to back this up with some facts, and let's take a look at the University of Phoenix, who published a survey very recently. This is March of 2024, where it said the Career Optimism Index. And I just want to cherry pick a couple of things out of here. You can go and search for the University of Phoenix. In fact, I'll put the link in the video for you to check out yourself. But the main gist of this is I'm going to cherry pick a couple of major things. And the first thing being is that employees feel replaceable in their current role. And not surprisingly, employers share this belief. So what that means is that 53% of workers feel that they are easily replaceable in their position, or they feel the sentiment from their employer is that they're easily replaceable. It's 53%. And right behind them, 52% of employers feel these same employees are easily replaceable. So when we're looking at layoffs and we're looking at, talk about AI and these types of things, the reality is that the employer is looking at the average employee as replaceable. So what does that tell us? It tells us that we have to have differentiated skill sets. And if you are not differentiated in your career, so if you can't look around your department and maybe even broader your industry and say how you are different than everybody else who is at the same level as you, then you have a differentiation problem. So I implore you to figure out ways to make yourself more valuable to the employer, because these are the same companies that are laying people off left and right, and they're looking at AI more and more closely. There is a silver lining here in that in 2022, 57% of employers felt that their employees were easily replaceable, and that increased in 2023 to 60%, which is not surprising given all the layoffs that have happened. And we're actually seeing a reasonable decrease from 60 down to 52. So that's an 8% decrease in the number of companies who feel that their employees are easily replaceable. Does that mean that employers are starting to become more loyal to their employees and starting to see their value? I don't know. You use your own judgment there. And then another data point that I wanted to go over is that employers are making fewer hires, seeking the perfect match, and are struggling to find well-qualified applicants. And now that's kind of rich considering how many candidates are coming into their ATS systems. But nonetheless, that's how employers feel. Yet, employers are struggling to find the perfect candidate that fits everything they're looking for. And this is showing that 56% of employers say it's been difficult to find new talent for their company or in department over the past year, which is quite interesting considering how many layoffs, how many additional candidates have gone into the market. So the fact that employers are saying it's difficult to find new talent is a little bit head scratching, but nonetheless, that's how they feel. That's also saying 51% of employers say it takes more than 1 month to fill an empty position in their company. I don't think that that's necessarily out of the ordinary in most cases, and at least in every company I've ever worked in, regardless of what type of labor market environment or climate there was. 45 days to 60-day time to fill, which is the metric that recruiters are usually judged on for the time that the job requisition, the job posting is open till the time that a offer is accepted, is time to fill. There's a clock that happens there. And that's pretty common, 45 to 60 days. So an employer saying it takes more than 1 month to fill a position is not like overly concerning. But this one is 44% of employers cite a lack of well-qualified applicants as their greatest challenge for finding talent in the past year. That one is telling me is that employers are being very picky about what it is that they're looking for. They're demanding the perfect candidate. Those job seekers, that's what you're up against, and that's why it's so difficult to find a good job. Employers are being extremely picky, and they're going line by line through their job posting, and they're looking for people who check every single box. So it's never been more important to make sure that your job search and hiring game is on point, where you're showing a very clear fit for the jobs that you're applying to. So that's the deal. Employers really are being that picky, so you have to do whatever you can to set yourself apart. And if you're somebody that's struggling with that component, that's actually something that I specialize in. So I've got a website called alifeafterlayoff.com, which is loaded with tips and tricks, all from a recruiting insider's perspective. And I share my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses. The first one is called Resume Rocketfuel. Resume Rocketfuel is designed to teach you how to write a resume that is going to give you the best chance of getting noticed so that you can get into these interview processes. I walk you through exactly what recruiters and hiring managers are looking for on your resume and how to present it in the most effective format. There's templates, and I actually walk you through how I write my own resume so you can follow along in an easy to follow format. And the goal here is to get the phone to ring, and it's not just to talk to the recruiter, but ultimately to get into the interview process so you can speak with the hiring managers and you can pitch all these great experiences that you have that can clearly tell me that you're a great fit for that job. And that's where the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. It starts off at job search, and we go all the way through each round of the interview process. I give you specific tips and techniques and strategies on how to ace each round, ultimately to get to the job offer. And once we get to the job offer, I teach you exactly how to negotiate it so you don't leave any money on the table. But listen, if you want to get those recruiters to start contacting you instead of the other way around, that's the preferable method for getting a job. Listen, it's a lot easier to get hired when you've got recruiters contacting you than you sending out resume after resume and praying that somebody takes notice. And that's where I created the course Unlocking LinkedIn, which teaches you how to leverage the tool LinkedIn to get noticed by recruiters and start getting into the interview process. Even better than that, it teaches you how to skip the recruiter, ultimately to get right to the hiring manager so that you can get deep into those interview processes without going through those gatekeepers. Listen, I know job search stinks. It's not fun. It's not something we're all used to. We just want to be able to do our jobs, be left alone, and go about our life. And I'm here to help you learn to ace the game of employment. Anyway, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.